When we were kids, we all had our go-to happy place, our escape. We gravitated to art, movies, bands, musical, or books. Something that did not make us feel alone, but empowered us in a world of love, magic, and adventures. Come with me as we explore the wizarding world with William Phoenix. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second installment of Wizarding with William Phoenix, a 11-episode podcast brought to you by the lovely people of Manbitesretro. Oh no, I got it right. Manbitesretro. This week we are going to talk. Since last week we covered JK herself with the lovely Miss Katie. This week the next logical step would be the creation of Harry Potter characters. And I was able to secure and bring a friend of mine, but a lovely lady who runs Simply Potter and has been part of this world for many years now. And I figured who better to ask than the lovely Brandy. Welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking the time. I know that between conventions and your page and everything else that you do, time is always short, but I appreciate you being able to take the time and help me out in this week's, because it's a lot of characters, a lot of people to talk about, not a lot of time. So why don't we just get right down to it? The creation of characters. Obviously, we're talking about the we're trying to cover as many characters as we possibly can, but obviously covering the big ones from the trio of Harry, Hermione, and Ron, and the professors, and Dumbledore, the Muggles and the non-Muggles, and everybody in between. So, Harry Potter, the man himself, the main character that we've all come to know and love. How did you get into the whole Potter world? How did Harry Potter become a part of your life?
At a very young age, I picked up my first book and started reading it and fell right in love with it. And everyone that I was growing up with was really in love with it too. Our teachers read it to us in school, and so it kind of became the culture growing up.
Okay. So you read the books before you saw the movies, or at what point did you start watching the movies compared to the books coming out?
I read the books first. I read the books right around when they came out. I was going to all the midnight premieres for the book releases, and I kept up with those, and then went to the movies as they came out and did all of the releases for those too.
And which one would you say was like your favorite character out of all of them?
Definitely Luna Lovegood.
I mean, I knew the answer to that one, but
I just dressed as her all weekend.
She does, and if you haven't gotten to meet her yet, she does an amazing Luna, and like her character wise, and she portrays her very well. She's got like the glasses. She's got it like down pat. Beautifully done. So the characters. Let's start with Ron and Hermione and Harry Potter. Obviously, every hero needs, if you want to call them their sidekicks, but in Harry's instance, I think it was more like, I don't know. I feel like Hermione and Ron have always been kind of like an extension of Harry, without just being Harry. Obviously, they are needed to carry on the story, but I don't believe that had it just been Harry by himself, he would have been able to be as successful as he was.
Yeah, I like how you said that they were complimenting Harry. So it seems like Ron and Hermione each had qualities that Harry was kind of lacking, in order to do the things that he needed to do.
And that is true. Because it's not like they were, at no point do I feel like, even through their adventures, they're really trying to upstage each other. Even when they are, misunderstanding, or they're arguing with each other, they're not trying to ever really be better than the other. And they obviously always come to the realization that they need each other. Like, not to sound cliche, but like they complete each other, and that's how they're able to come to the conclusions. Obviously, Hermione being the smarts of the three. Between the three of them, I mean, obviously, I identify with other characters, but selecting from these three, I'd be more of the Ron character, because he brings, he always tries to bring the humor. He's always, very witty. He comes from a big family, obviously, and there's times where he has those moments of lucidness to where it's like, oh my God, Ron was actually right about something, and who knew? We all thought that Ron was just supposed to be the comedic portrayal or the comedic part of Harry, but he has his moments, which, I mean, I have my moments. So I think that when I say she, obviously meaning JK, did a very good job creating these three characters and bringing them to life, both in the books and in the movies as well. But he wasn't just like one, because a lot of heroes have like their one sidekick. She gave Harry basically two of them, but they were a necessity. They were something that needed to be done in order for not the story to go on, but the character to develop and almost like find himself, and they help each other to find themselves, because as much as Hermione and Ron have the advantage that they come from a magical world, and Harry was pretty much around Muggles his entire life, they still have that, I don't know how to exactly say it, but that need to, as you grow up, learn from each other, that even though you have the advantage of coming from a certain world or a certain class, it doesn't mean that you look down or look up to other people. And I think that's one thing that not a lot of people ever really talk about. Is a lot of people think, oh, if you come from a different class, or if you in this case, literally a different world, you'll never be able to fit in. You'll never be able to get along with people that have been there their entire lives. And Harry Potter and the trio disproved this, because Hermione's like the daughter of a dentist, I believe. And so so she comes from a somewhat well-off family. I mean, it's not the Malfoys, which have are just come from a very high hierarchy and a lot of money, and then exactly high society. And Ron comes from a poor family, which the hand-me-downs and the big family, and Harry comes from the Muggle world. And here they are, and from the very start, they find each other in a train or on a train, randomly happen to be in the same cabin, and it's the beginning of like 7. I don't want to say like wonderful years, because the last few years probably are not exactly wonderful.
A little difficult.
A little difficult, but at the end of the day, when the Battle of Hogwarts is over, they find themselves together again, and it's kind of like they have come full circle. They are now adults, or much older, and even when they bring their kids to the Hogwarts Express again. They find each other at the station with the Hogwarts Express. literally the story has come full circle. And I mean, we all know by now that nothing happens by pure coincidence when it comes to JK. She's put a lot of thought into just about everything that she wrote. So this is one of the reasons why Harry Potter has become such a big part, because every character, good or bad, brings something to the story that's, I mean, other than Voldemort, really, somebody can identify as, somebody can see and feel like they are a part of, and whether they cosplay them or whether they just feel like they are them, or, they go back to the books to get lost in them, they will always be there. And I don't know, should we start with the Dursleys or should we start with Hogwarts? Where do we proceed from here?
Good or bad?
Good or bad? I mean, we could be cliche and just stick with the good and save the bad till later, but why don't we just, since, they seem to be like the three main muggles that we encounter in our stories, the Dursleys. The uncle and the aunt and the cousin of Harry Potter, which take him in, and you realize from a very young age he's surrounded by hatred, he's surrounded by anger. He doesn't exactly have the perfect childhood, and you find out at the end, and I feel bad that they cut the scene, because I think that it would have really given her a lot of depth, where Aunt Petunia, when they are leaving to go hide, looks at Harry when the house is empty and goes, the night that you lost your mother, you didn't just lose a mother, I lost a sister. Yeah. And not that I condone how her attitude towards Harry was, because she was mean to him, but you kind of feel, for the first time, you kind of feel for this woman, that it's true. Like, Harry was a constant reminder that her sister was not around anymore because of that, and it's not easy,
Yeah, and I think even by extension, just a little bit, like, she probably feels guilty because she let her jealousy of her sister being magical and being able to go into this entirely new world and go to this new school, kind of separate them as sisters and not be as close. And so, she dies at a young age and never had a chance to rekindle her relationship with her sister. So that probably had to haunt her too every time she saw Harry.
I honestly never even thought about that. And this is exactly the reason why I brought you on for this episode, because insights like that are very eye-openers and very true. There's really no taking away from that. And yeah, it is that constant reminder. Her husband was a douche, and there's not much about that. And to put it kindly, even his cousin has a redeeming moment where, I'm not exactly sure what the quote is, but again, it's where they're leaving the house. And I believe the scene was cut as well, which I'm like, why would you cut the scene? He looks at Harry and he says something along the lines of, you're not insignificant to me, or like, oh, you matter to me. He has a soft moment with his cousin. And you're like, okay, this is him having grown up, or understanding that Harry doesn't have it as easy as he thought he had. But we never really get a moment with the uncle where you're like, I understand where he's coming from, or I see why. He's just mean, very, very much till the end. Like, he yells at his son to get in the car. And it's like, okay, whatever, dude. Like, calm down. And you just... No, go ahead.
It seems like Petunia almost wants to be, nice and motherly to Harry at times, but it's Vernon that's just like, no, we can't be nice to this. This is not right. People shouldn't be magical. It's disgusting. And, mistreats Harry. So Petunia has to side with her husband, in that moment. And he has no redeeming qualities at all.
Yeah, and you kind of feel like, again, with the scene with Petunia where you feel like she had, like you said, she had to submit to her husband because God knows what he would have done had she sided with Harry for whatever reason. And it's like, was she mean to him for the reasons that we talked about, or was she mean because she had to side with Vernon? Otherwise, God knows, what his reaction would have been. Imagine had she picked up a letter from Hogwarts and handed it to Harry in front of him. That would have been the end of the world.
I wouldn't want to even think about what would have happened.
Right? Like, and then he's like, "Oh, we're moving tonight," and she doesn't put up a fight. They all pick up and they move onto the island in the middle of nowhere.
And the hut on the rock. Like, think about what kind of thing must be going through someone's mind. Like, how much hatred he must have for something and want to stop it so badly to be like, "We're packing up and getting the hell out of here." And that's not the kind of guy that I would want to go against if I were Petunia, so I can kind of understand it.
Yeah, no, totally. But I mean, those are the three main Muggles, which I think are pretty much the only Muggles that really we encounter that have any kind of depth to them. Because then when her sister comes to visit, I mean, she has that encounter with Harry, and then he blows her up like a balloon, and she goes off into the sunset. But we don't really get much of a backstory on her, or I don't believe that we hear from her again. So we really don't have to cover her. She was just another mean old person, and that's that. So moving on to what I call Hogwarts grounds, because that's where we encounter a lot of the characters, other than in Diagon Alley. And again, there are going to be characters that we're not going to really talk about, not because they don't have much of weight on the story, but there are so many main ones and reoccurring ones, I guess it's a better word, that's what I want to try and concentrate on. So we're talking Hagrid, Snape, Dumbledore, McGonagall, Sirius Black, those kind of characters. We may not cover people like Professor Quirrell, or
okay.
That was quite okay. I mean, I will obviously cover Voldemort as well, because I mean, there's no Harry, there's no Voldemort. I mean, there is, but this is what it all comes down
there's
to.
No story.
Yeah, exactly. There's really no story at this point. And then we'll try to touch as many as we possibly can. And yes, we will also talk about Luna Lovegood, because I mean, we have to. So the next one, which is pretty much, other than the professor at the beginning, is one of the main first characters that we get to meet, is Hagrid, the groundskeeper, the lovely, incredible Hagrid. Why don't you start me off on this one?
All right. Well, first let me say that I think that Hagrid was the best motherly figure to Harry. I love all of those votes that you see online. It's who is the best mother? Was it Molly? Was it McGonagall? It's no, it was Hagrid from the very beginning. Hagrid made it his mission. Sir Dumbledore, of course, go rescue Harry and make sure that he makes it to the school and that he gets taken from those awful Dursleys. You can see his motherly nature through all of the creatures that he takes care of over the years. I just got done reading the fourth book with the blast-ended screws, and I don't know what person in their right mind would want to have an animal like that, but Hagrid's referring to them as his little children, and them being so cute and adorable, and they blast fire at people and are horrifying to the children. And just throughout the entire series, he kind of pops in to Harry and checking on him to make sure things are going okay, and he never kind of leaves Harry on his own when things get challenging. He's always inviting him down for tea and his horrible little rock cakes and stuff that he makes, trying to be that supportive person to Harry. And I really like that about Hagrid. And I really like that Hagrid's just kind of himself, and a lot of people think of him as this monster because he's a half giant and he kind of lets that get to him at some point in the series, but for the most part, he kind of carries himself and lets people believe what they want to about him without taking it too much to heart, minus the fact that Rita Skeeter wrote an article and that kind of got to him. But yeah, he's like a really strong, good, supportive character, I think.
Yeah, and I agree with you. He is very, like, he's the first real positive role model that Harry gets to encounter and stays with him till, the very end. And it shows Harry from that moment, from the moment he finds out he's a wizard, that there are loving, caring people in this world, or in a magical world for that matter. And that was like the first turning point for Harry, because up until then, all he had really encountered was the hatred from his adoptive family, foster family, however you want to title it. And here's this person that brings him a cake for his birthday.
Yeah.
And and we can easily deduce that up until now, she was never really thrown a birthday party, let alone have a cake on his birthday. And here's this complete stranger that shows up, knows who he is, brings him a cake, something like a small gesture like that. Yeah. And it's a big turning point for Harry. And then he's whisked off into this magical world, and Diagon Alley is where he brings him. And it's like, I can only imagine if either one of us lived a life as miserable as Harry, and then all of a sudden we're told you got magical powers, and here's a whole town or street of magical people that you have no idea existed. Kind of like when we all first walked into Diagon Alley at Universal Studios. We became Harry. We, with the Hogsmeade will open first, but it was great. But then being able to enter the same street and feel that, I don't know, that magical feeling that Harry went through in the stores and how accurate it was, it's great. And places like that are great because, especially for people like us that are so intertwined and so involved within these stories, we can kind of get an idea of how it felt like for these characters. And then I'll touch base on it not quickly, but because he does play a part in both at the time and in the future for Harry, he meets Ollivander. Oh. And, Ollivander, that's where we get the first touch, or Harry gets really the first connection with Voldemort of his own, because up until then, Hagrid told him about the story and how his parents died and everything else. But other than that, the Harry hadn't had a connection of himself of Voldemort, and he gets his wand, which we find out the core of the wand, the only other wand that was ever made like that was Voldemort's. Mm-hmm. Which, that right there is foreshadowing like there's no other tomorrow of how connected he really is. Right? It's like, oh, okay, like it's gonna get real at this point. And then we don't see Ollivander until I believe Deathly Hallows, or around there.
Yeah, in the books he comes in the fourth one and does like the weighing of the wands, which would have been cool to see in the movies, but they cut it out.
Yeah,
they
true.
didn't put it in there. But,
there's so many scenes which I understand by time frame why they were cut, but I feel like other scenes could have been cut to make room for these scenes, which would have looked great on screen, but like the Petunia scene would have had such a strong impact. Which I'm glad that they included. I don't know if all the versions of Harry Potter on DVD have it. I have the Hogwarts limited edition, so I have like all the edited scenes that were cut out, but they did not make it. So it's great. Also because you have the option of watching them as part of the movie, not just as a special edition. Which, when you see a scene that's cut in a special feature, it's like, oh, okay, it's cut, then fades to black. But when it's incorporated into the movie itself, you're like, oh my god, like you feel like I've seen this movie a million times, and then you see it with those scenes that are cut, and you're like, I'm watching a whole new movie because this has got so much different meaning to it.
Yeah, they do that on the TV marathons too.
Okay.
They play them on like sci-fi and stuff. It's really neat. You see them for the first time is when I saw it like on TV. I'm like, was this in the movie for the first time I watched it? Because I do not remember this. This is really cool to see.
Yeah, like there were times where I caught myself with it. I was watching them on DVD, and I was like, wait, I don't remember this scene in the movie. Like, and I've seen the movie a million times. Like, how do I not notice it? And then you realize, oh, it's because they incorporated all the edited scenes. That's great. And so now, I feel like there's like a slew of them, but let's start with like the professors of Hogwarts. And of course, I feel like we cannot start with anyone else other than Minerva McGonagall. So she is the head of Gryffindor. Mm-hmm. Right? Yes. I'm a little bit on the tired side, so if I get it wrong, I apologize. This is why I have Miss Brandy over here so she can tell me, Will, no. Just no. Bad Harry Potter fan, go sit in the corner, I'll take over.
I would never say that. You know that.
But Minerva McGonagall, which other than Hagrid becomes another motherly figure, still with like the authoritative level of being a professor to where like she can't coddle Harry, but she can guide Harry. And
she's a hard ass mom with the strict
like,
rules.
Sometimes even like low key guide him because she can't exactly show that she's taking sides or playing favorites. But she's kind of she's like, oh wait, I can't tell you to do this, but
here's a broom anonymously in the mail.
Right. It's like, how does that even, I don't know. Like, it just happened. He got here, got my name on it.
Wink.
Welcome
to the quiz team, Wink.
Which is great when there's that part where Harry, they're told to stay off the brooms, and Malfoy throws the Remember All, and you see her look out the window and see Potter on broom, and you're like, oh, she's gonna bring down the hammer. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is it. This is where she's gonna be like, nope, blah, blah. And she's like, we're gonna put you on the team. Come on. And you're like, what? Like, any other student, she probably would have like put in detention and taken points away from their house. But it's Harry, so it's like, no, we're gonna make exceptions.
You can like feel the fear, like when he's being taken away from the field. He's like, oh hell no, like this is it for me. And then it's just like completely unexpected when she goes soft. It's like, can I speak to Wood?
Which I think like the counter, like you said, like she's like the tough love, hard ass mother figure for Harry. Then I know we said professors, but we're gonna take a quick sidestep and bring in Molly Weasley, which Molly was the coddling, loving mother for Harry, the one that could give him the hugs and and the kisses and treat him like a son. And Harry, feels part of the family and what a mother really feels like. Which, I mean, it goes without saying why she was created and given as much depth as she was, along with raising the Weasley clan. When you have boys like Fred and George, you've been tested. So everybody after that is like going to be a walk in the park. And obviously, like, not to bunch them together, but like the Weasleys characters, literally, I feel like created to make Harry feel what a family was, like a loving, caring family. And there were so many created because they have different characteristics, which, some of us have one brother, one. I don't know what your sibling situation is, or if you have any siblings. But I feel like each one was created to portray a certain persona. Like obviously you have the twins, which are the troublemakers. They're the ones that you know they'll get you in trouble, but you just can't say no because the memories that will come out of it will be either significant, needed, or just fun. You have, I feel like, Bill. Bill was the responsible one. Bill was the one, he went to Hogwarts, and then he went and he trained the dragons. What country did he go to? I want to say Bulgaria, but it's not Bulgaria.
Was it Charlie that did the dragon and Bill did?
Maybe it was Charlie. Oh, I think it was Charlie.
Now you got me thinking.
What? I always forget about Charlie. I will admit at that I am bad. But I
just read the 4th book too. I feel like I should know this. I always get these two confused though.
This is why Google is my best friend.
Yeah, Charlie is the dragoness.
Charlie's okay. So Charlie was the big responsible one, or maybe not necessarily like the responsible one, but more the professional one. He graduated, he got a job, something that he loved doing. He went out, he followed what he wanted to do, and got to play with dragons. Then obviously we covered Ron already, which was the poor little Ron, the one that was picked on, but still tried to make a name for himself.
Dog in the family.
Exactly, the underdog in the family. He's almost like the middle child of the family. Like I don't want to say the redheaded stepson because they're all redheaded, but he was like the middle child to where everybody picked on him, and he tried to make do. And wow, we're already 30 minutes into it.
There's so much.
And then there's so much, and then obviously there's Ginny Weasley, which becomes his love interest, which is where we kind of separate the whole family thing because now we're talking about so you would date your sister, which no, that is not the case. But Ron ends up with Hermione, so Harry's like, I'm gonna go get your sister. That's cool too. So back to Hogwarts and the Professor Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Professor Dumbledore. Oh, so much to say, so much to cover.
I know.
And I know that on some level, some people are going to be like, there's the whole. I just want to say we're covering the characters as we would read them and first learn about them. I know that a lot of the characters. A lot of people have brought up different theories and different stories, kind of like, why would Dumbledore leave Harry with such a hating family and he knew the dangers and he still let it happen? I understand that, and we will get to it on hopefully on a later episode about the depths and about the goods and the bads of certain characters. But right now, I just want to talk about like the basics. What they may represent, let them, not talking about the mistakes or the bad thoughts that they had. Dumbledore was what? Like Dumbledore was like, if you had to put it in family terms, like the grandfather for Harry Potter.
The wise old man who had all the experience, was kind of guiding the whole story, really.
And again, like McGonagall, he couldn't exactly tell Potter yes or no on something, but she made sure that he tried to nudge him in the right direction for him to get to the bottom or get to where he needed to get. I think one of the best examples is in the 3rd book when he knows, he's trying to give him the answer on how to save Sirius and by extension Buckbeak, but he can't tell them, go back in time and do this. But he's just kind of like, I think 3, things on the time turner will fine. 3 turns should be good. And you're like, oh, okay. And that's the kind of nudge that Dumbledore it tends to give Harry, especially early on in the storylines. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, like he would definitely be like the wise old grandfather. Which
Always watching.
he even like in the first book, he even Harry has all these candy, and he usually you go to the grandparents and they give you candy, and he takes one of the flavor beans and he gets earwax. But it's kind of like I always, especially at the beginning, because I first started. I will admit, I first started seeing a few of the movies before I started reading the books.
Yeah.
So I was basing it more on the movies I had seen at the time, and I was like, oh, because it kind of reminded me of my grandfather, where he always guided me. He always, he never lectured me, but he definitely would tell me when I did wrong without me actually being in trouble, which is what I think that Dumbledore really represents. One of the darker sides of one of the darker professors, which again, there's that whole, is he a hero, is he not a hero, all this and all that. But
you could have a whole episode on that alone, and
exactly between Dumbledore and this one, and you know where I'm going with this one.
Yeah.
Severus Snape. Oh, good old Severus Snape, head of Slytherin house. And I don't know, like, where would you put Severus Snape in a Harry Potter family, like in Potter's family? Is he like like, I wouldn't say like the drunk uncle.
Yeah, I was thinking like a grouchy old uncle, like a bitter old uncle.
I loved your mother. She never loved me back. He should have been my son, but you're not. Whatever. And just chugs from the bottle.
Over you. I'm not even gonna go there.
And for the for the longest time, we always think that he's going to be one of like the main villains.
Yeah.
That would, in the end betray Potter and turn into the Dark Lord and everything, which then we find out otherwise. Spoiler alert, he doesn't. If you haven't seen Harry Potter by now or know the story by now, it's been more than a few years. I am sorry if I ruined it for you. Also, spoiler, Dumbledore dies.
I had a shirt that said that when I was growing up. I was a little kid.
Quick note, I don't know if I ever told you this or not. What makes me always laugh about Severus Snape is that, like I said, I started watching the movies way before I started reading the books. My best friend Chrissy had always been a Harry Potter fan from the books, so from the start.
Yeah.
And she, we went to the midnight release. The only time in my life I've gone to a book release at midnight of Half-Blood Prince. And at the time, the cosplaying was like your Party City witches costume. Like there wasn't like this big hoopla. This was also in like, I want to say West Hartford, Connecticut, or some small town in Connecticut. So we get the book, and she flew through it in like 2 or 3 days. And so me being me, I'm like, so what happens? And she wouldn't tell me what happens. And I'm like, just tell me. I'm like, I'm never going to read the books anyway. I'm probably just going to like watch the movies and take it for what it is, blah, 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 blah. So she tells me about what Snape does in the observatory. And we all know what happens in the observatory where Snape kills Dumbledore. And I'm like, Snape kills Dumbledore. I'm like, why would he do that? And she goes like, I don't know. He turns out to be a Death Eater and this and this and that. Now, I think I want to say I had only seen up until the second movie at this point. I had no idea about anything that was forthcoming, anything in the books that had been written, nothing. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, what if he's like a double agent and he had to kill Dumbledore to sell the fact that he's on Voldemort's side, but he's actually a double spy, and in the end, he'll be on Harry Potter's side. And she goes like, no. She's like, that's just like way like that's far fetched. Like he wouldn't kill Dumbledore. Like he'd find a way to get around it so he doesn't have to kill Dumbledore. Like he went back to being a Death Eater, and with Draco and everybody else, and that's that. And I'm like, all right, I'm like, whatever. Fast forward, I'm living in Florida at this point, and Deathly Hallows, the book comes out. And my phone rings about 2 or 3 days after the book came out, and it's Chrissy. And I pick up the phone, and I'm like, hey, how are you? What's up? All I hear is, you are an asshole. Click. And I'm like, what? So I call her back, and I'm like, what's this all about? Like, what I do now? Because she always had a tendency that whenever I did something wrong or stupid, she would just call me an asshole and leave it at that. But I had no clue what she was talking about. So she goes, Deathly Hallows came out, and I read the book. And she pauses, and there's a pause on the phone, and all of a sudden you just hear me going, and I just start laughing uncontrollably. I'm like, I was right, wasn't I? She goes, that's why you're an asshole, and hangs up the phone on me again. I'm like, oh my God. That was one of the very few times in my life that I called something that far in the future, but like completely out of right field, and it actually went my way, which was,
that's really smart, because I thought the exact opposite, because he was like a dick all the time, like to little kids, and just like completely was painted to be this horrible guy. I'm like, yep, he was a Death Eater all along. I knew it. I so badly like hated his redemption. I'm like, ugh, I hate this guy. Like, why is he getting this? Like, no.
I would say that Mad-Eye Moody would also be like another drunk uncle, but as then we find out, especially when we're first introduced to him, we then find out that he's not really Mad-Eye Moody. But then the real one, further on in the story, is also there to protect Harry. I mean, obviously, he's part of the Order of the Phoenix. So again, as Snape was the negative drunk uncle, Mad-Eye was like the positive drunk uncle.
I like that.
The battle torn drunk uncle with war stories that he would tell you around the fire when you're like, Uncle Moody, we don't need to hear this. We're kids, but okay, go on with your story. And he's very protective, obviously, of Harry and everything, also because of the Order. So that's where I would put Moody, because I mean, I don't think that there's much, we could go into depth about every character we talk about, but this would be like a 4-hour episode, and I'm trying not to do that. Which, as we're touching on the Order, I have to bring up my favorite character in the entire Harry Potter series, and I am biased because in the movies he's portrayed by one of my favorite actors, Gary Oldman. So obviously we know and the hum knows that where we're going. We're talking about Sirius Black, and which is we're comparing people to uncles. He literally is Harry's uncle, and he's the loving uncle. We have the negative uncle, we have the drunk war-torn uncle. He's the loving uncle. He's the one that gives full guidance to Harry, and the first true family member that Harry finally has.
The one who gives him hope for a home.
Which, when we first encounter him, we think that he's the one that betrayed his parents and everything else, but then obviously there's this huge turnaround, and he realizes what the truth is, because Pettigrew, and the only thing that we will really say about Pettigrew is that not everyone that belongs in a house truly belongs in that house, because Pettigrew was definitely not a Gryffindor, but that's all I will say about that, and we covered his character now. But
it's all the attention he deserves.
that's all the attention that he deserves, exactly. But I loved how she brings in Sirius And like I said, she brings him under a lot of turmoil. You know, she doesn't introduce him as this character that comes out of the blue with open arms, loving, and Potter runs into his arms and whatnot. No,
Yeah.
it's under duress, it's under distress. And, you know, we find out that he turns into what we call Padfoot, which is funny because every con that I go to, anybody with a service dog, I'm like, oh, look, it's Padfoot. Some get it and laugh. Others just walk by like, what are you talking about?
Who's this crazy guy?
And one time, and I want to say it was here in New York Comic Con, I actually did that. It was with a black dog. And I was like, oh my God, it's Padfoot. And she looks at me and goes, how'd you know? The dog was actually named Padfoot. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
Oh, well, lucky guess. but yeah.
I can read mine.
I can, right? But again, you know, the loving uncle having problems of his own as well still finds the time to give guidance, to give love, and to, like you said, especially give hope to Harry throughout this. Because when we meet him in the third book, and this is when things start to get really serious for Harry. Not that, you know, the first two weren't really serious, but the story really starts getting really dark. And then no, go ahead.
Special place in my heart for Sirius. I really like him because he's like one of the first characters who doesn't treat Harry like a kid in an eggshell who needs to be protected and watched all the time. Like he's like what is that, the fifth? Yeah, the fifth book. He's like trying to induct Harry into the order before he's an adult and like give him all this information and like pretty much like ready him to fight against Voldemort because he knows that's what's going to happen, you know, eventually anyway. While everyone else, like Molly's like trying to coddle him and treat him like little baby. So I really, really like that about Sirius.
Yeah, and absolutely, because, you know, he knows what's coming, like not all the details, but he knows that Harry's life will get a lot harder before he gets easier. And as much as Molly and Mr. Weasley were there as his parents to try and shelter him, he's like, you can shelter him for so long, but you're going to have to prepare him, or you're just setting him up to literally lose and die if you do nothing about this. You can't just wait for him to be of age. Voldemort's not going to wait for him to be of age. He's going to come after him. He's already come after him. So obviously it goes to show that this, you know, this needs to stop. Like, we need to get him seriously ready. And I've always put him, like, obviously Sirius being blood, but I think that another counterpart or somebody is very similar to Sirius would be Professor Lupin. Because Lupin, again, being part of the Order, gives him the guidance. Like he's Sirius before Sirius was around.
Yeah, I feel like he's a more cautious version of Sirius. Like he understands the severity of things, and he understands that Harry should know certain things that he needs to learn to defend himself. But he's not like as crazy about it as Sirius, like unhinged. He's like very
almost
calculated.
He's like almost like a mixture of the Weasleys and Black.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he tries to coddle him while warning him, but still, like, you know, obviously he teaches him the spell which ends up saving him, which now everybody wants to have one. The Expecto Patronum charm, or spell, and he carries on to a degree what Sirius could not because of what happens to Sirius, and unfortunately he meets his demise as well. But he was an extension almost of Sirius, and even after Sirius passes away, you can kind of like see where Lupin realizes that the coddling also needs to stop. Like he's like, okay, now it's more like the hardcore. Let's talk about, well, we have to talk because I don't want her to get cut. So going completely into right field, into one of the most I don't know how to describe her. I'll let you describe her. But ladies and gentlemen, we are going to talk about Miss Luna Lovegood.
Yay!
Take it away, all you.
Oh my gosh. So what to say about Luna? I could talk about Luna forever. I think, I mean, as far as like we're kind of relating everything back to Harry, I kind of think like Luna gets introduced in the 5th book. And the 5th book's like a time where Harry is just kind of like not sure of himself. Like everybody thinks he's crazy, like thinks him and Dumbledore are lying, don't want to believe him, kind of make him a social outcast, which Luna absolutely is. Like she's viewed as crazy. People call her Loony Lovegood, and like she's really okay with being that and doesn't care what people think about her. Whereas like up until this point in his life at Hogwarts, Harry's been kind of like this hero and everyone's loved him and everyone's praised him and looked up to him. So he kind of like falls down to her level and she's there to catch him and be like, it's okay to be like this. Like we believe you, like my family's behind you, I'm behind you, your friends are behind you. And that's what should matter. Like as long as you know the truth about yourself and your story, like everything's good.
I feel like she brings one major point that she does bring is that, like you said, when Harry is almost seen as an outcast because nobody believes him that Voldemort is back, she makes him see that even being an outcast, you're still part of something. Because there is, when you're an outcast, you find other outcasts, but then are you really still an outcast? Because you find yourself being part of a group. Yes, you're part of a group of outcasts, but you have something in common with these people. And she teaches Harry in her own way that just because, people call you an outcast and make you feel like you're alone, you're not alone. There's a whole bunch of us, her, being the forefront of them. And I almost see her as like a young Trelawney almost, because Trelawney being the professor, oh my god, I can't think of the word right now. Divination, thank you. You're kind of seeing, like when it comes to like anything that's psychic or out of the, different, you are always seen as a little bit of an outcast, and that's where Luna kind of, falls. So, and also being, her family being how they were and how they, when you see her house and whatnot, it's like, okay, I can see kind of like this being the place where Trelawney would live. So, she was a character that was still talking about Luna, she was needed. And, she was needed without people realizing that she was needed. And she helps Harry when Ron and Hermione, when Harry finds himself in a place where Ron and Hermione really were not in, because themselves, had never really been outcasts, so to speak.
Yeah.
He finds this 4th person there where it's like, let me help you through this phase. And then when you're back, she does it. She could have easily become like, the 4th member of the trio and being like, oh, now we have the outcast member. But like she proverbially sends him back to the trio once people realize that Voldemort is back and everything. And she never really tries to, become part of the group. She's still there in further down the road when she's needed. I believe, like, if I'm mistaken, she's the one that tells him, or that kind of like solves the whole diadem issue when Harry can't figure out what he's looking for. And again, here comes Luna, and she pretty much saves the day because he's able to find the diadem and destroy it, another Horcrux in his quest to beat Voldemort. So I absolutely she may not be one of my favorite characters, but I absolutely love Luna because, like you said, not only she's the outcast, but she's that needed person that people don't realize that she's needed until they need her. And then all of a sudden it's, please help me, I need your help. And she doesn't sit on a high horse going, oh, Now you need me. Now, now you acknowledge me. She's like, okay, it's my turn to step up, do this, do that. I'm going back in my little hole.
Yeah, she's like undying about her friendships with people. Like, it doesn't matter what people have done to her. Like, Hermione calls her Looney Lovegood on accident, like in front of her face, and like they kind of like don't get along very well. But she still like respects her and is nice to her and like steps up and helps like Hermione and like every like thing that they're trying to do, like with Dumbledore's army and stuff, and like really values everyone's friendship and does what she can to be supportive. And she's great.
So I know we're running past our usual length. We're running at about 50 minutes right now. But there are a couple more at least that we really need to touch base on. And okay. I mean, the next one that we really need to talk about is, the man himself, if you want to put it that way, Voldemort.
What up, man?
What up, man? Voldemort represents everything negative about the wizarding world, and we will touch. I do have an entire episode that I'm going to be touching on with the whole Death Eaters and the controversy about them and how they, are seen in the magical world compared to our world or the Muggle world. So we will get into more depth about that. But Voldemort really just he embodies everything negative. There really is no redeeming quality about him other than, your supervillain that just wants to take over the world and make everything according to the world that he sees, which I don't think that even Salazar Slytherin himself would have really ever gone that far as much as he wanted to have purebloods only at Hogwarts. But Voldemort just literally splits his soul and loses his soul to gain the what he hopes to be his mains, and he doesn't know what love is. He doesn't know what friendships are. Anybody that's with him is with him either because they believe him and they follow him, or because they fear him. And he's one of those, like, would you as a leader rather be loved or be feared? And obviously his response would be, I would much rather be feared.
Yeah. And it's really funny because Voldemort's character is kind of built out of fear, really, because he's like afraid to die, afraid to not gain power, which is why he does the crazy things that he does, like to gain a following, to split his soul, to not die. So it's really funny that his MO is to be fearful and instill fear in other people.
I want to say that his character, like, more than just like a family member, because he's the uncle you just don't talk about.
One that's been banished from the family that you pretend never existed.
Exactly. He's just like, what happened to Uncle Voldy? We don't talk about Uncle Voldy. But he represents more than a family member. He represents not completely losing yourself. People say, like, if you want something, if you want to achieve something, go out and get it and follow your dreams. And you do. You want to go out and follow your dreams and try to achieve your dreams. Don't lose yourself. Because when you lose yourself and when all you think about is just that, you will, like, I don't want to say you become Voldemort, but it's just like you lose, like almost you lose who you are. You lose your humanity, which is basically what he does when he becomes Voldemort. He loses his humanity, and it's like you want to keep your feet on the ground and still follow your dreams. But the moment that you just like step over people and kill people to achieve those dreams, that's when you're like, okay, you need to stop and you need to take a break at this moment because you're going way too far, way too fast. Then obviously we have, and we're going to group them together, but I want to compare them to the Dursleys in the Muggle world. You have their counterparts in the Wizarding world, which we're talking about the Malfoys. The Malfoys, you have the wife, which you can see that she's subservient to her husband and, follow her husband up until the point where she's like, enough is enough. Our son now is being put in the middle of this and could potentially die. We're out of here. And that's when he turns tail and leaves as well. But he's like the arrogance of, the wizarding world. He's the, I have money, you must bow to me. I mean, he almost goes to kill Harry Potter when he gives Dobby the sock. He pulls out the wand and he's starting to say about the cadaver, for crying out loud. It's like nobody sat there and went like, wait, he almost killed Harry Potter over losing an elf. This is how self-centered this person is. And
part of his status. He needs his servant.
Exactly. It's like, oh, you cost me my servant. I will kill you over the fact that you cost me my servant. And it's like, holy crap, dude. Like,
calm down, bro.
Exactly. Like, take a chill pill. The quick note on this is that when I talked with Pierre Bahana, which is the prop master and the designer of all the props in the Wizarding World, I met him at this, I want to say the first celebration of Harry Potter that I went to. And I happened to run into him after one of his panels, and I had the Malfoy cane with me because at the time I wasn't Jacobing yet. I was just, Slytherin guy number 3 in the background. I made up my own little character. I ran into him and I thanked him for the panel and how nice he was and whatnot. And he goes to, he puts his hand out and he's like, may I? And I'm like, you designed this, so yeah, you sure may. Like, have at it. And he's looking at the cane and whatnot and observing it. And he looks at me and he goes, do you have any questions? And I'm like, oh my God, like I have like a million of them. But I'm like, what do I ask him?
How much time do you have?
Right? It's like, I know that, security is already going, we need to go. But you're here going, do you have any questions? Yes, I do. And so since he was looking at the cane, I asked him, I'm like, what made you design the Malfoy cane versus everybody else that has wands on them versus, Malfoy being, he has like his cane and the wand inside the cane and whatnot. And he simply said, well, I always envisioned him as being this bureaucrat, and the cane to him portrays the power because he has, and I'm paraphrasing obviously at this point, but basically, the cane brought Lucius, the feel of grandeur. And he's like, and this is why I made sure that Lucius and, oh my God, what's his wife's name?
Narcissa,
thank you. Lucius and Narcissa's wands are the only 2 matching wands in the entire Wizarding World. Because if you look at the cane and if you look at Narcissa, they both have like that like studded part to them, which is like the matching part. He's like, because the Malfoys are the kind of people that would go and redesign their canes because they have the money to do that, and they have matching canes because it shows unity of the family. And that left me completely dumbfounded. I'm like, oh my God, like up until that moment, I hadn't realized that their canes, that their wands matched.
Yeah,
and I'm like, oh my God, it's a his and her wands. And yes, there's nobody else in the entire Wizarding world that has matching wands. That is absolute pure genius. And then after that, security was literally trying to like hold him by the hand and pulling him away. So I was like, hey, real quick, can I ask you to sign it? And he signed the cane. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so great. You're right. So I had the cane signed by him and Paul Harris. And if you don't know who Paul Harris is, he is the one choreographer for all the Harry Potter movies and the Fantastic Beast movies now as well. So the 2 people that, one designed it and one drew the motions on how to use the ones and whatnot are now autographed in that cane. I'm like, mind blown. But that was like my moment for the Wizarding World, like the celebration for that year was like, holy crap.
You
I
know
know,
what's
like
really funny about that?
what?
It's really funny because Jason Isaacs that has panels will like take credit for like saying that he wanted to put his wand in the cane. People asking like, what's it like having like your wand like in a cane? Like, oh yeah, I thought of the idea for that.
Oh, we just dropped a bombshell on that one. Whoopsie.
They gotta go head to head now.
Yeah. See, I'm gonna wait for the day that they're both on the same floor at the same panel and ask the question: who really designed the cane? Whose idea was it to put the wand in the cane? And see who says what. Because
the real duel happen.
Oh my God!
Paul Harris, they're coordinating it.
I'm gonna get escorted out of the panel. Like, you're not supposed to ask the tough questions. You're just supposed to ask, "What's your favorite character?" Any other characters that you want to talk about real quick that we may have? And like I said, I know there's like so many of them. Draco, obviously, Draco being the the bully that's caught in the middle, that feels like he has to stand up to what his father believes him that he has to become, and I feel like as much as a douche as he was, he does redeem himself at the end, because like in the movie we only see him going on to Voldemort's side, but I believe in the books he actually then just goes back because he realizes that these are the people that he grew up with, and he's not ready to stand there and kill them. So he does have his redeeming qualities as well. And then obviously there's Longbottom. Longbottom is that kid that was bullied and had bad luck his entire life. And then not only does he grow up to be, a stud muffin in underwear commercials or underwear model. Neville Longbottom, yeah. His bottom's not the only thing that's long, right?
Should have asked him that at his panel on Sunday.
Oh, dear God.
I would have been a square.
I dare you to ask him that next time you see him, because, you see him once, twice a year. But again, at the end, he becomes part of the heroes because he's one of the reasons why Harry is able to beat Voldemort by cutting off Nagini's head. So again, he redeems himself, not redeems himself, like he has his moment. He also came from a tortured past. Oh my God, I almost forgot.
Yeah, he could have been Harry.
He could have been Harry Potter. He could have been the Potter. No, one of the main characters not main characters, but one of the characters that I feel like if I don't talk about, I'm going to get lynched. I killed Sirius Black.
Oh, good old
yes, good old Bellatrix. Bellatrix is a crazy aunt, which people try not to talk about, that just shows up at parties and weddings even though she wasn't invited, and gets drunk and does really stupid stuff, and then goes for the bad boys. But I mean, she was demented. There's really, again, not much redeeming qualities for Bellatrix Lestrange. She was
her redeeming quality.
yeah, pretty much. I feel like she just feels like she wants to live up to Voldemort. She wants the approval of Voldemort, and will do anything and everything she can to get that approval, whether he gives it to her or not. We're gonna cover that in a different episode too. Yeah, no, there's gonna be a whole episode I'm covering where it's beyond Harry Potter, which is basically Fantastic Beasts, Cursed Child, Puffs, and fanfic.
Okay.
Yes. So yeah, no, that's definitely in the book. Too, no pun intended. Is there any other character that I may be missing that we absolutely feel like we need to cover?
I feel like there's one that everyone is always really swooning over that I don't quite understand, which would be Dobby.
Yes.
like everyone, like a lot of people actually will ask, like, which death affected you the most in the series? And people are always really quick to say, well, Dobby's. Like, okay. Like, I get it. Like, he comes in and he's like this little lovable person who wants to like help Harry and do all these things for Harry, and he's kind of cute. But at the same time, he's kind of like that annoying cousin who's like really intrusive and like always wants to sit next to you and you're doing things. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, you're not wrong. But I also feel that he's that annoying cousin that does that because at home, like in Dobby's case, you know, he's beaten, he's kicked, he's talked down to. He's literally like he's the house elf. He does the dirty work. And when he finds himself around Harry or just not a Malfoy manor, he can be free, even if he's still belonging to the manor to the Malfoys. He can be free, and then he is, obviously freed by Harry. But yeah, I mean, and again, a tragic death. And to me, the one that got me the most was obviously Sirius Black.
Yeah, same.
Which I was like, oh my God, no. But just the way that Dobby dies, I like. This is gonna sound dark, but let me finish before you start writing your comments. I like the way that Dobby died, or more like I like where Dobby died. He dies on a beach. And why do I like that way? Because to me, that signifies the true meaning of freedom. When people say, I want to be free, I want to get away, I want to not feel, I want to, just escape, where do you people usually go? They go to the beach, they go to the ocean. And that's where he ends, that's where he dies. And he's put, hang on a second, sorry. And he's, he's buried by the beach, which symbolically he finally reached his freedom.
I never thought about that before.
I actually just had that epiphany right now as we were talking, because I'm like, wait a second.
So smart. And then they even put that on his tombstone, like, here lies Dobby Frio.
Exactly.
Yeah, look at that.
So yeah, that's why, like, yeah, he may be an annoying cousin, but that's because he's not the annoying cousin like Harry's cousin, which was just like, coddled and given everything in the world. He was the annoying cousin because it's like, when I go home, I'm going to get beaten and kicked. So I'm going to enjoy myself over here. No feels allowed. So yeah, like I said, like, there's many more characters that we could talk about and cover. And I know that there's probably some that, some of you are like, hey, you didn't cover this, you didn't cover that. And I'm sorry. If you feel like there should be other characters that you want to hear about or talk or have any in-depth thoughts about, please let me know, and I will make sure to touch base on them. There are other episodes that we're having that I could definitely put in, or I'll just talk about them just, to cover it for you. I mean, we still have to cover the Harry Potter books and versus the movies. We still have the selecting of the cast. We have the influence in pop culture. We do have other episodes that, if I missed anybody of importance, I can definitely cover it at a later episode. But I will say that is all the time that we have. Thank you so much, Miss Brandy, for your time. By all means, let us know where people can find you and your wonderful work.
Yes, so I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as Simply Potter or Simply Potter Girl. So.
And she has a lot of material. Trust me, you could sit there and read for days and get lost into literally anything and everything this girl does. We have collaborated in the past before. We have always a lot of fun doing it. The most recent thing we collaborated, other than this episode, was Harry Potter pickup lines, which we did with Gryffindor pinup and some friends, which is definitely adult material, but you can find that on her YouTube channel. It's good for a laugh. If you're looking and you're having a bad day, have a listen, have a watch at that, because it's great. Thank you so much, Ms. Brandy. Until the next time that I can wrangle you up for another episode, you have been wonderful.
Thanks for having me. It was fun to do this.
And again, you are listening to Wizarding with William Phoenix, brought to you by Man Bites Retro. Have a magical night. See you next time.